What's going on, guys? Bingo here. I am with the Duel Factory after a very long hiatus to
No, he's
talk
not.
to
He's
you
lying
guys
too.
about Yu-Gi-Oh! Welcome back to, well, more realistically, welcome to the X2 Drop podcast that we do. It has been a very long time, but it doesn't mean we stop playing the game or stop talking about it. So it's good to be back. So for anybody listening, this is the Monday after the UUDS that just happened and the 25th century celebration stream. So now we get to say that the undisputed Ultimate Duelist Series champion is in fact Jesse Cotton. So there's a lot to talk about from that event alone, as well as the development of the metagame, and just like how Yu-Gi-Oh is right now. Because we were talking about it for like an hour before this, and then we just decided to do this. So first off, what were your thoughts on the actual tournament of the UUDS? Right, because it's a very different tournament as a whole. When you look at it, right? 16 players, the best, the quote unquote best the world has to offer, and
Arguably,
obviously,
it
yeah,
was supposed to be arguably the best.
yeah. Now they each won at different points in time, right? So it doesn't always translate, but a good player fundamentally should be able to play. But there's a lot of metagaming that goes into deck building in these situations and stuff like that. So, just how'd you feel about the tournament, start to finish?
What I was saying is like the deck choices. Like, sure, they weren't like super exciting or anything like that. Like, it was just a bunch of mirror matches. But from like a competitive standpoint, if you're watching like the gameplay, there was a lot of high level gameplay, and I found that very entertaining on my perspective, just because I like watching like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. Even though like the last, I don't know, forever, all I've been doing is playing like Rogue Jank, and like for some reason I can't put Fusion down. But we're not going to get into that. Um,
Yeah, I
but you
mean,
watch it,
all right.
and then all the players, even the ones that weren't like well known, they all had some sort of accolade other than like winning the UDS. Like most of them had like multiple YCS tops. Several of them had multiple YCS, if not a YCS win. So like it's all top level gameplay, and it's all players that were good from all different time periods, right? And then you can see how it translated to modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! And I thought that was the most interesting concept of the whole entire tournament.
Yeah, I agree. The gameplay was just it was good and enjoyable to watch because sometimes at a YCS in the middle to late rounds of day one it could just be anything, right? It could just be
For
terrible
sure.
gameplay. It could be terrible, but the even though it was only 16 players, every feature match was at least exciting to go into
Right.
because
My only gripe that I had of like the if you look at like the actual like feature match stuff is like as an attempt to keep the content from getting stale, they started featuring the players like we noticed at like round 4 where they started featuring players that were 1 and 2 in the current tournament and stuff like that. So
yeah.
that kind of threw us off a little bit. But the gameplay, if you watch the matches, the gameplay was actually still good. I think the only one that was like bad, I think was like Shu Ping Shu or something like that, where he bricked 2 games in a row, and that was upsetting.
You know, I know. I think it was round four. The feature was Shuping versus the guy playing Flu, right?
Everyone's favorite,
Yeah.
the birds, the
But
penguin, if you will.
I just thought it was in because the only thing I was thinking about in the early, especially day one, was looking at the decisions that they all knew, right? Fire's obviously like the best version or the best deck to be playing,
The year of fire, the year of dragon.
but each approach, right, which we have since seen the deck list, so we understand it. But like Jesse Cotton's list, where he chose to side into Divine Temple, Subversion. He's playing the big Gamma package. He's playing 5 cards for time because it's expected that the rounds are going to go very long because of the interactions of players. It was just very interesting to see, and then you got to see some very high level gameplay. Like for example, the one play that stands out that I know a lot of people have been talking about was I think it was in the finals where Jesse was gauging a Nibiru, I believe, and he summoned Sunlight
It
Wolf.
was the yeah.
Yeah, so he summoned Sunlight Wolf, and he had the two bodies back from Flameburge, and rather than summoning under the Sunlight Wolf with the level 1 bodies, right, he didn't, right, and that's a very good, like, his opponent is going to feel like that's a well-placed Nibiru because he's not going to get the value from Sunlight Wolf, right? He already used Flameburge, but it didn't matter, right? And, like, you saw
ultimately,
like, if you rewatch that, you see him, like, thinking about it, and you can just see where he decides that's not what I want to do, and he was probably anticipating the Nibiru. Because if he didn't get Nibiru, right, and he wanted to get the Sunlight Wolf effect, he could just link Rebo. What did he lose besides getting the card out of his hand so he could keep playing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you also saw like the opposite side of the spectrum. So let's go to the top 4 match where it was Cam versus Jesse, and it's Fire King's. It's a Fire King Sinful Spoil Mirror, and you're watching Cam go through his plays and everything like that, and you think like everything's pitch perfect, and then one misstep on Cam's side plays into a Nibiru and completely switches the tempo of the game altogether, right?
Yeah.
Because Cam prior to top 4, he was 5-0-1. He was the only undefeated, and he looked primed to win game 1. And then the next thing you know, it just all goes downhill, and then Jesse just completely takes over that match. Like, it's crazy to see how, like, even though we're watching like high level gameplay, you see one misstep and it completely ruins the entire game. Like, it's crazy.
And I know, looking at this event, it obviously, like, they're all high skill high caliber players, but this is kind of something I've been saying with, like, my little group that I talk with regularly.
My fan base.
The fire deck is really strong. Obviously, we know this, right? But good technical play is good technical play, right? Like, we've seen it over the years. We've seen bad players pick up good decks and still get beat because they're a worse player, right? And I feel like whether you're playing fire yourself or you're doing what we usually do is just play rogue in some way, you can easily beat fire against a bad player with rogue, right? If they don't understand their technical play, which I really enjoy, because fire's strength is that it's really hard to break through, and it gives itself an immense amount of follow up, right? Like,
oh yeah, fire is like, it's completely different from traditional combo decks.
But if you can get through whatever they set up, like, they're not that hard to kill, right? And like we were talking about off stream, sequencing in the way you layer your interruptions and how you bait those interruptions is huge right now, right? You have a lot more history in the game than I do, but I can't think of another time where the way that you use your interruptions as well as you layer your interactions has been more important than it is now because of cards like Princess and Kieran
for
and
sure.
the way stuff interacts.
Because, like, if you go through like the actual like history of the game and you're looking at like combo decks that like were traditionally good, so like there's the Thunder Guard Dragon deck, which like you were just making a big board, but like your interruptions were like there to begin with, right? Like there wasn't like setting up more interruptions as it played, other than like a little few nuances there. And then you have the Goki combo deck where you're just linking your opponent.
Yeah, vomit
and then
combo, right? That's like the old
vomit combo. And then like I guess there's like, and then there's other decks like Zoo where like you did like the fusion sub combo, but like you're just trying to draw into hand traps, and those were your interruptions for the most part. Obviously, there's Dryden and stuff like that. Yeah,
literal traps. Yeah,
but the Snake Eyes stuff gives you like a whole different like dimension in terms of like an actual combo deck. Because like when you're watching like the actual Snake Eyes deck like do its thing and like you're hitting its combo doing whatever, right? Like its inboard's like not that impressive. Like you have when you glance at it anyway.
Yeah.
So like if you have someone who like just got into the game and like they're watching you play this or like watching someone play it, right? Like you're sending them like they're ending on like an Amblo Whale. There's an IP in the spell and trap zone, and then they have like say like for some reason you're still playing the XYZ like the Sanctuaries face up. That doesn't look that impressive, right? But you have to look at it from a different perspective. There's an Amblo Whale on board that's going to go in the graveyard when it triggers the Promethean Princess. Raytheon Princess is going to generate a body. The Ambler Whale is going to have an effect that generates a body. Then you have the IP coming back from Flamberge. Like, there's 5 different point of interactions and different layers of how they're sequenced into that. So realistically, like, going into that board, that's if you see it from a competitive standpoint, if you've been following, that's a terrifying thing to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but at first glance, it's deceptive because like it's just like it doesn't seem that oppressive, but it is.
yeah, it's because it's continuing the design philosophy that if you're not like really looking at the game if from like a competitive perspective over a long period of time, you could miss. But that's what Konami is pushing, right? It's not about the build a board, like you can't play the game as like the main focus for the decks that they're choosing to be the better decks in the room, right? With tier limit being kind of the same piece, right? Where it's just layer after layer of interruption. You have your Havnesses in hand. You have your the stuff that you mill, right? It's just your shufflers, your fusions, your Perleranos. So you have stuff in hand, field, and grave. And this is debatably the same thing, right? You could have Kieran in hand. You could have your Princess in grave. You could have your IP on field, right? And it's just how you use those interruptions.
For sure.
I think it really goes to show that like Konami is trying to adjust the game slowly over time, right? I don't think you can deny that, right? Decks are becoming more versatile in the way they're interacting with their opponent and what their end board is, as well as like being built in with follow-up. So it kind of is taking that piece from other card games where it's like it's not about is your deck better than theirs, right? But what Konami wants everybody to feel like they're playing the game, which is what even the best Magic the Gathering player in like modern or standard specifically, right? If you're playing a game of standard, right, you're going to have turns, right? You're going to have interaction. It might not be good interaction, but you're going to feel like you're playing, right? And that's where I feel Konami is trying to take the game, so it doesn't feel like you never had a chance.
No, for sure. It's kind of interesting too now that you make the comparison, like for example, when you're playing like a tier deck and stuff like that, because it does a lot of the same similar things that like the Snake Eyes, Fire King, like all that stuff does. I think the difference is the tier deck for one of the most oppressive decks I've ever played against, but I also played Chimera, so I'm biased on that one. But those you're just trying to hit like mills and like designing your deck to like hit these cards, whereas like the Fire King strategy is like every piece that like is interrupting, like you're searching and or making the entire time. There's no random mills or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's more designed at that point, but at the same time, like the form, it makes it even interesting because of how they're playing the deck. But when you think about it, like it doesn't feel like a tier 0 format. Like it still feels like the format's wide open and it's undiscovered.
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes with what I was just saying. Like, the people that I have interacted with Fire, right, where I've played casual games or just playing at local tournaments, from my view as their opponent, it wasn't even close, right? I never even felt like I was going to lose those games, and that's because I could tell they were new to the deck. They weren't super confident in what their deck could do. And I felt like I was in control all the time. But that's because I knew what they could do, right? I knew how my cards interacted with theirs. And I think that's really what the point I was making earlier, where you got to be good at technical play with the Fire deck, right? You really do. Or else, like, you get advantage, but then you just get punched really hard and you die. Right.
For sure.
So, I'm really enjoying this format.
It's really good.
I don't foresee myself picking up Fire, barring like a lot of reprints. Like I just don't feel like it. I enjoy the deck I play. So,
I'm sure at some point I'll play it because I inevitably like playing combo decks. I just do. But there was another really interesting thing that came up specifically from the UDS that CJ pointed out, and I think it's interesting to talk about. Is how did you feel about them being able to look at the deck lists in top four?
I don't mind. I think this goes into right the competitive nature or the peak competitive nature of this tournament, right? Um, it's open kimono, right? Everybody knows what everybody's playing, right? Usually at the highest levels of the card games that I've played, uh, that's public information at top tables, right? It's less about the whispers behind the curtain of I saw him playing this or I think he's playing that or like your buddy hooks you up with it. I don't know. He's in his testing circle and he tells you that he's siding X, Y, and Z, right? Like it just gets rid of that. You know what's in everybody's deck. It has its
I
downsides.
gotcha.
But like I mentioned earlier, the question is, did they know that top four had those rules ahead of time?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know,
That's the
but
biggest question because it
I tell you
opens
what.
up. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead and finish yours.
I was just gonna say it if they did know, right, that means everything is a choice, right? Knowing that if I make it to the top four, right, my opponent is gonna know that I don't side hand traps. I don't play hand traps, right? Like the Brandon player. And
Hmm.
that's a choice. Right? But if he didn't know that, right, and he was like he was siding like mistaken arrest or whatever, right? Maybe he would have sided nib instead of mistaken arrest because it if he made it to the top four, he at least wanted his opponent to think he could have something, right? That's
Oh,
my only that's
for
my only
sure.
complaint is if they didn't know, then they should have been informed. But I feel like they
Oh,
would be, to be honest.
probably, and that's one thing to consider. Now, I was what is it? I've played long enough to remember when they were doing like the ARG Circuit Series, the top 16. Everyone like got to see the deck list and everything like that before like the matches started and stuff like that. So you had perfect knowledge of the deck, right? So I think it's interesting, but at the same time, like it almost like it just depends on what your choice of play is too. Like so, for example, Fire was the most represented deck, right?
Hmm.
The only difference in the top four feet in the top four is there was one branded player, which was Andres Torres. So all three of those people in that top four, other than Andres, knew that he was not playing a single hand trap in his deck. Like you said, it was branded. He was playing all gas, which in its defense is arguably probably the most popular build of the deck because that deck doesn't really have a lot of room for hand traps, right?
Yeah.
But previously, say if they didn't know, now they have that information. So now instead of doing like the regular lines and like testing and playing around different hand traps, they know for a fact
Yeah, I'm gonna go for
that he
the
just doesn't have it,
I'm gonna go for the heat
right?
soul line. I'm gonna burn my
So you could do all the plays that are like unsafe but yield like a huge card advantage. Now they just get to do them. And I'm not saying that like it's like an advantage and an advantage, right?
yeah.
But in that particular case, since not everyone was on the same deck or just with like different tech choices and stuff like that, he is arguably at the worst advantage because he chose to play something that was not the top tier, and now it almost feels like he gets punished for it. So that's one perspective to look at it too. But at the same time, he has the same thing, knowing like, okay, cool, I know what he's playing, so now I know what I have to play around.
Yeah.
So vice versa, he could do lines he wouldn't normally do against the same decks, knowing that he only has to play through X, Y, and Z versus this whole pool of hand traps. Because I don't know if you noticed, but we like our Yu-Gi-Oh right now currently has like I don't know like 10, 12 playable hand traps that could be all fit in different scenarios.
Yeah.
So like that sucks.
And
But
you could argue that right. Obviously, dice roll does matter in what I'm about to say, but
oh, 100%,
he he
100%.
he's playing. He has a lot to gain from knowing the potential interruptions that his opponents have, right? Because let's say he wins the dice roll, right? I mean, he still has the gimmick puppet lock in his deck, right? And if he knows the only answer to one opponent stopping that from resolving is either Nibiru or Ash, then you can gimmick puppet under 5 summons if your Branded Fusion resolves, and you know for a fact your gimmick puppet, your lock's going to go through, right? So like there, I think at the end of the day, it really sucks if they didn't know about it, but if they did, I don't mind because I've seen it in other competitive settings, and if that's the standard, people are going to adjust to it. You know what I mean?
I'm not gonna lie to you. If I'm in top four and I get to look at my opponent's deck list and I get to see my brand new fusion's gonna resolve no matter what I do, bro, I'm going crazy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Right. So,
Like I'm doing hella stuff in the turn, but that's me.
but it was I think we could wrap up the UDS topic. I just want to say like I had a very good time watching that event, which usually I'll be okay with missing like some of the YCS or catching it up over the next week, but like that I especially day two I was actually like watching the stream to watch the matches, which I almost never do. So I was very excited and happy to see it. So
It was super fun to watch.
thank you.
Super fun.
So with that, right, we've obviously established that the fire is kind of the focus of the meta, right? If you wanted to define it as tier 0 or not, that's up to you. It depends on which definition you use. But we can see from the YCS this weekend, the UDS, and just the discussion that people accept that it is the gravitation of the format, right? It has the pull and it's the focus. So you're either playing fire or you're playing you're playing a deck that is not fire, right? Those are the two options, and obviously,
Oh, for sure.
right, both have their advantages and disadvantages, but you can not deny that most likely the fire deck is the best one in the room, and I think that's my definition of tier 0 is when you are deck building with that deck in mind, it's probably a tier 0 format, right? Like with it, you're developing your main deck with the intention that that's going to be the majority. I think that's where I draw the line. So
I think it's a good definition of it for sure. Because I know, like, for me personally, when I'm doing deck building, I've already come to the consensus that fire, like some version of fire, right?
yeah, some
Which you're right. It's the best deck. It's been proven at this point. Like there's no question. Like for example, like when I've been doing like non-engine in my main deck for what did I play last? I played Chimera, and then this week I've been playing Cash. I've been thinking to myself, okay, cool. What hand traps are not good against this deck? What cards am I not trying to hand loop myself with? Like, for example, I've Ash Blossom, like when you see like Fire Player, like the chances are, unless like your hand's super weak, I'm not activating that card.
mm-hmm.
But like, I'm also making like my hand trap choice or non-engine choice based off that one particular deck. So like, I'll notice like when I'm playing, like I think I played against a Chimera player when I was playing Cash, like some of my hand trap choices weren't the best, right? So now you got to a format where like people are experimenting with other decks other than Fire, and you're sitting there and like you're getting caught like unprepared or something like that. Now you have to ask yourself, well, is it actually really the best deck, or is it just the most represented deck currently? You know what I mean?
And it's tough to say, right? Because we were in a position where we got to naturally see the meta develop, right? Because we do live in the TCG, and just the way the Yu-Gi-Oh environment structured is, we'll never be in that position because we just talk about what's coming up from the OCG, and like people have bias, right? Like people were preaching fire meta 6-8 weeks before these cards even came out, right? And it's just like,
Yeah, Fire meta, but they're never prepared for Punk Tier. I'm just saying.
correct, right? And people are just beating this drum over and over again. So no matter what, by the time the cards came out, right? How many tier 0 thumbnails did you see on YouTube, right? Of deck profiles, like it was just everyone.
At least two.
Yeah.
So, at least 2 dozen.
So
at least
it's hard to say, right? But I think no matter what, it's going to continue to be the most represented until there's a rotation, and by rotation I mean a change in the status quo, right? A ban list, unforeseen new product that changes it up. But
either some sort of ban list, new set that comes out, or kind of like how Goki format, when we got to the end of it, where the entire community just had a group consensus that we're just tired of playing Goki. That was hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, that does happen, especially at smaller
Yeah,
events.
it does. It does. I tell you one thing though. One thing I do find interesting about formats like this is when you start seeing like interesting side patterns or like interesting side deck techs. Like what was it? The one we were talking about earlier, like where the guy with the they were talking about siding like Shaddoll Fusion and then playing like Aerial Dragon. That was a cool side deck tech. Jesse Cotton playing 3 Delta and a Gamma.
Yeah.
Shit's hot. It's also $30 basic rares. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that, even just now, right? Seeing the side deck patterns for the Fire King Snake Eye version, where a lot of players are choosing to side out the Fire King stuff for their non-engine and Temple, right? Because it does have a lot of value going into those games 2 and 3.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So it's I'm not complaining about this meta by any means, right? I'm excited to play in it.
I don't know, John. You like to whine a lot.
But
A lot.
I think just understanding that this is the focus of the format, just like if you're a very numbers guy, right, and you're like 63% of the meta needs to be a deck for it to be tier 0, whatever, dude, right? Like go back to Kashtira format, right?
Right, but what if you're a big Wordle guy?
Well, then you ain't me.
Okay, that's fair. Anyway,
Go back to Kashtira format, and very rarely did Kashtira take up the vast majority of top cut, right?
but you were prepared for Rise Heart.
But you were deck building with a Rise Heart as the main antagonist, right? So like that's what I'm talking about. So with that information going into this coming weekend, because we have YCS Las Vegas, right? We have another 3v3 coming up, which I think is going to be probably what kind of sets the tone for the rest of this format. And I use air quotes because like you never know when they're going to end, but it's a 3v3. It's in the United States, right? These are always heavy competition YCSs, and people look at them pretty.
Yeah, that's the event you're gonna win, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh God.
But yeah, so going into that event, I'm obviously I am going, right, so I'll get to enjoy going X2 drop and playing some giant card, right? That's the plan.
Yeah, you will. Keeping the namesake alive, you dog.
Right, so I'm excited to see what comes out of it, because right now from the last one, it was majority fire, and when I say majority, it's like it was like 80-90%, wasn't it?
There was a large representation of Avatar del Rey del Fuego.
Yeah, so I don't think I don't know, it's tough to say because people want to do the best, right? And after the UDS,
Be the very best, like no one ever. Oh, my bad. Wrong game.
but
Anyway, this is slightly off topic, but do you think Power Filter will get balled out before or after the YCS? Shout out to Lucas.
that's the spell, right?
Yeah, neither player can special summon monsters with 1,000 attack or less, dog.
I think if that was a trap, I genuinely think it would be it would see play.
Nah, bro, what are you talking about? It's the right color. It's a green card.
It's the same reason deck lockdown never fucking works. Ever. It's because it's
Bobby would be so upset with you right now, I'm not going to lie. Roberto, if you will.
something we were talking about right before this event, or right before this recording, was all right. Fast forward 5-10 years into the future, and
No, we weren't. He's lying too. Don't let.
people are going back to this format, right? After it's all said,
We were never coming back to this format. Let's get that painfully clear. Anyway, continue.
pretend for 5 seconds, all right?
Under no circumstance.
People want to revisit this because for some reason they're as attached to it as Edison players are now, right?
Kind of like I want to revisit Goki format. I feel that.
Deck building, right? Right now it feels like we're very unexplored because of all the hype that was built around the fire.
What are we talking about?
Coming out.
Free Suprex was a staple in that format. What are you talking about?
I'm saying right now, right? It feels like
All right, I'll stop.
just the community is kind of like in this groupthink mentality where it's just like, yep, we got to play this version. We have to play exactly this right now, or else it's not good, right? And there could be either a version of Snake Eye cards that hasn't even been discovered yet. There could be just a deck building process that hasn't happened that can keep up with these cards. And I feel like we'll just never know because the way media or information is dispersed amongst the media and how people just kind of believe whatever they hear and have other people make decisions for them a lot of the time nowadays with Yu-Gi-Oh and what's good and what's not.
For sure. But we didn't talk about the greatest format of all time.
Which is 2017
Fish FTK format.
No.
2014 Nationals, you say it with some goddamn reverence.
17 Nationals, thank you.
No, we're not playing. No, it was 2014 Nats was the most lit. I don't want to hear any more discussion about this because I'm not trying to body you with True Draco Zoo again, dog.
We never played that format, dude. Anyway,
Yeah, no.
The reason I was bringing that point up is because we see that it was like you have to play. Your deck needs to play at least 12 non-engine right now, or you're not competing, right? 15 at a minimum, right? You hear all these like people talk about non-engine. I bet
I have something.
I bet it in a couple of weeks we'll be down to like, or not non-engine hand traps, right? Specifically hand traps, right? It was like you need
board breakers, dog. I'm team board breakers.
You need 12 to 15 hand traps, and that's just that.
You need 12 to 15 board breakers.
That is never the way, right? You look at just the history of the game, right? The decks that are just like, I'm gonna snuff you out with hand traps, and
I'm gonna snuff you out,
and then I'm gonna play. It's not the way, right? The format's gonna develop, and we're going to see breakers and engines and ideally innovation come through, because people play around hand traps, right? You look at the UDS was a perfect example of people reacting to.
Yeah, but John, those are good Yu-Gi-Oh players. The average Yu-Gi-Oh player just unga bungas it. You know this.
Yes, I do. All right, and this is where one of my frustrations / enjoyments with the player base comes through, because mediocre to bad players are predictable, right? I mean, net deck. There's nothing wrong with net decking. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a very time-consuming hobby, right? But if they're just like, I'm just going to take the same idea that was working and use it, right?
I don't know, but now I really want a BLT.
Why?
Like a lot. My bad. Anyway.
So that's my thoughts going into this event. I feel like people are just gonna like kind of steal the ideas from the UDS, even though some of them were made specifically for that event, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
The metagaming that happened in the deck building process, like, but people aren't going to see that. They're gonna look at the deck list and be like, "Ooh, this thing is great. It won the event, or it got third place. I'm going to do that," and that's exploitable, right? That's something like a good player can take advantage of, even if they're not playing fire.
For sure. But what if they want to play water?
What's the water deck, though? Because there's a lot of water cards in my deck.
I mean, you got the fish deck. Shoutouts to Aaron for ruining Earthbound cards for me, but we're not going to get into that.
I mean, I know he was playing the Earthbound Goaty like pile, which is pretty neat. But like, there's a lot of cool stuff that could happen right now, right? With let's step away from fire, right? There's just some cool stuff that came out, right? We got the new Goaty cards, right?
New Goaty cards, new Raid Raptor cards. I think I've been talking about that deck for a while. I think that deck's lit.
New Raid Raptor cards has been.
For those of you who remember Sauceless French, we got Goblin Bikers, and they got a Goblin Biker named after Doug, so I can Doug you with Doug.
Yeah, Goblin Bikers came out. And there's a lot of cool stuff at just like right below the surface. It's just, I feel like it's not getting the attention, right? Like,
it's not getting the attention. We got Super Poly Goo, and it's getting no attention.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Ubel stuff, right? Have you
seen give away the Goo
Ubel Unchained list, basically, right? Like, I just
don't think there's a lot of cool stuff that's been overshadowed, but like, It's gonna have its time. It's gonna have its time.
I see. That's the thing. I don't think it will. Right. I don't think
It's
it's
got to at some
really
point.
gonna
So
get
someone is going to show up to an event. They're going to be on Demon Time, or they're going to be Himothy, or Himalayan, or whatever, and they're just gonna, they're just gonna shake the wave. I don't know what I was saying. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you.
they're going to cause a splash or something like that, right? They're gonna
A splash.
and maybe right, but unless a good example of what we're talking about happening right now is like when Makanko, right, kind of came out of nowhere. Like
There's nothing cool about Makanko. Stop the cat.
I hate
Stop the cat.
I can't stand the green guy. Super annoying.
They're just waifus. They're just waifus.
But
They're waifus with swords.
Think about Makanko right before it kind of got spotlighted, right? Who was it? I can't think of his name right now.
Simon He.
Dude, I don't remember.
No, it's some dude that always gets slow play warnings, and I always find it hilarious because he blatantly slow plays, but it's fine.
Right. Before that, like, yeah, you had little Jimmy playing Makanko, but
Jimmy.
It didn't have any spotlight on it. But after that, people took it as a serious, like, meta relevant deck, right? With the Acid Golem lock, with its OTK potential. It's just like no one.
Acid Golem lock was hilarious.
Yeah, just no one gave it a chance. So I feel like there's a lot of room for that to happen, especially like Raid Raptors. I'm not saying Raid Raptors is the call, but it's just a deck that just got.
I'm telling you right now, if you're not paying attention, that deck's gonna mess you up.
It's going
it's
gonna combo and it's gonna fuck you up.
Because like I've been watching people play it, like there's like standard like little 1-2 card combos, but like bro, if you hand trap the wrong spot and they have an extra bird, like
yeah, and it's
hashtag believe in the wings 2024. You feel me?
It's just all extenders, right? Like.
It's literally just one body leads to another, to another, to another, and like it's so funny to watch because we have the first rank 13, and like there's just like not a real out to a lot of these cards. It's kind of funny.
I mean, they have a Link 2 from the Link Reigns era that's still legal, right? Like and
it's insane, by the way.
At the same power level, right? Like
White Strix is actually insane for those of you who've never played it. It's White Strix because 4 Strix is the rank 4.
Right? And
which that card's still legal, by the way, and that card could arguably be considered an FTK enabler if someone just put enough brain power into it. But like, bro, the deck's hilarious, and what makes it even better, it got a pseudo power boost because the Bystials all got rotated out, and like they all have like effects that like yank one out of the yard, if you will. Shout out to CJ, to produce another body. It's so funny. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. So. I do hope some people get to get the spotlight on some other decks this format. But part of me says that's not going to happen. Right, so
walk and hope. I'll be out there. I'll be out there carrying the rogue flag for everybody.
Yeah. It's just more fun. Right? It's just more fun. Especially at locals. I don't see unless you're prepping for an event, I don't see a reason to play the absolute best deck in the room, unless you get enjoying.
Hey, sometimes people go to locals and they treat it as their Super Bowl dog. You just gotta let them do it.
Yeah, and I'm not talking a case tournament. I'm talking a 14-man locals, right? Like something small.
I'm trying to go to a 7-man locals, and I'm playing fire no matter what, bro.
Yeah, it's like that.
I need to assert my dominance.
I get no enjoyment out of that. You know what I mean? Like I
don't.
I get enjoyment.
I'm the complete opposite
of playing just something janky, something that's way below the current power level, or just I don't know. And sometimes you've experienced it. Sometimes you just don't have the time to change what you're playing.
No, zero chance. I think I put. What is it? I think before the Snake Eyes cards, or before we got popular, I think I played the same Fire King list for 6 weeks because I simply just didn't have the time to change it, or didn't want to change it when I got off work. And bro, it got so stale so fast. That's probably why I don't want to play it now, because I love Fire King cards. Full disclosure, like old school Barong, OG Garunix, Yaksha. For those of you who are old enough to remember that, bro, that deck was lit, and I can't play. And we don't even play Barong now. Now I'm just sad.
Yeah. But
bro.
I'll finish locals, put my bag in the corner of my room, my office, and not touch it till I'm grabbing it.
Is that where you keep all your anime waifu pillows?
Nah, man, that's the closet. And not touch it till I go again next week, and then like I have to go like my locals is 20 minutes away, but you're talking 4:30, 5 o'clock on a weekday for California traffic.
20 minutes.
Like it's 45 to an hour. Like
that's 20 minutes of your life you're never gonna get back, dog.
Yeah, so
that's crazy.
So yeah, that's generally why I gravitate towards like whatever I have. I'm excited for this YCS though. I haven't been to a 3v3 before.
So when we're quitting our jobs and going pro?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, is that just a me thing?
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
All right, man. We definitely can wrap it up. It is a work night after all, so.
It is.
What's your closing arguments or thoughts?
Honestly, I think this format's lit. And for those of you who forgot, and I have to remind you that if you remember the Douglas French, also known as Sauceless French, he still has no sauce, and he's in his 60s now. So shout outs to him.
He's in his 60s? No way.
No, he's not in his 60s. He is close to 40 though. Or is he 40? The world may never know.
All right, man. Well, it has been a blast to get to do this. I ideally will do it every week, but that's just not going to happen. You know, life's pretty busy. But
it will.
It has been good to be back. We love talking about the game, so feel free to hit us up on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. Joe still makes videos relatively frequently, not.
No. Like it's been a minute, but I'm gonna try to start doing more.
Yeah, so just hit us up on there, youtube.com/theduelfactory. I think it's the same thing for his Twitter. I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
And then if you guys want to talk about it, the best place to reach out is either Discord or Twitter for myself. If you have a suggestion, there's a place in the Discord specifically for podcast suggestions. But as always, it's been great. Look forward to giving you guys my X2 record next week after we drop out and show you the jump.
Bro, you're winning the event. Stop it.
Totally, yeah, man, totally. All right,
totally.
That's all I got. Thank you guys. It's been a blast.
Okay, bye.